like to highlight a few housekeeping information. The location is at the RB High Court HQ in Lanmari, and there are about less than 10 or actually 5 people inside the room, and we maintain a high adherence to the SOP as required by the authority. So the speaker as well as myself, the moderator. So the speaker as well as myself, the moderator, will just put off our mask while we're having the interview, and we'll put on that mask after the interview session has finished. Okay, coming back to the reason we are here, the IM Risk Awareness Program is established once we have the Urmc, which is University Risk Management Committee, established. This is among our awareness program to the IUM community. Okay, just to provide you some information, in VUCA number 60, where in May 2021, the University Risk Management Committee was established and endorsed during that particular VUCA meeting number 60. So the functions of this URMC, or University Risk Management Committee, is to overview and decide on the effective implementation of the university's risk management framework, and besides the risk mitigation progress. To align to as well, the Risk Management Office was also endorsed in the May 2021 VUCA meeting to assist the URMC members in executing their functions. And the recent VUCA number 62, the meeting have endorsed the latest revised IUM Risk Management Policy 2021. Anyway, without further ado, the awareness program will not be complete without the welcome remarks by our Chance Director, Tan Sri Sulawesi Abdul. Please welcome Tan Sri Abdul. No. MSD, Hakim. I pass to MSD. Thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. Yang berbahagia Tan Sri Wan Zulkifli, Wan Arifin, board members of IIUM, and also the chairperson for Risk Management Committee, Associate Professor Sharliza Puat Nelson, Director of the Risk Management Office. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, let me first of all thank you and wish you well for this particular session on risk management in our university. I thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for giving this opportunity to talk about something which is really very important for the university as we move forward into the 40th anniversary and beyond. I would like first of all to publicly welcome Tan Sri Wan Zul for being here in person to talk to you about what risk management is all about. This is something which is new to the university, although for a long time the university has put this together under the audit office, but I think the time has come for us to separate these two functions because the risk management is equally important in trying to navigate the university moving forward. This is something which is not easy because I was involved with it for some time in another life, but certainly this is something that all of us must learn and know it quite closely so that we can make sure that the university progress forward with minimum interference, with minimum disruption, and as smooth as possible as we try to achieve the goals that we have set for the university. For this, I think we want your commitment, we want your understanding of what this risk is all about, so that we can build this university anew in a sense, because previously risk wasn't a big factor or a big issue as far as the university is concerned. Given the pandemic, given all the things that's happening around higher education, particularly when all around the world people are looking at what the education system would look like in the future, certainly there are many risk factors involved. Already the discussion at the level of UNESCO at many international levels are identifying some of these risks. And this risk is something that we know, but we have not been able to handle it the way we should be handling. One of this is question of access, and the other is a question of success. The rest that follows through is a question of fairness, a question of justice, and also the question of equity. These are fundamental to education, and these are something that I think we need to address. And these are also the risks that is presenting itself to all education systems around the world, be it in developed countries and also developing countries in particular. And therefore, unless and until we are able to address this in our context, especially the International Islamic University, IIUM, because our mission is basically to bring justice through education by creating a system that is fair, the system that is equitable, and also the one that meets the amanah or the trustworthiness that is given to us, that all of us has accepted in the context of trying to make education as a leveler of society. And therefore, many of the things that we have to put in place will ensure that these are the values that we want to arrive at. Moreover, our university, unlike many other universities that talks about governance only within their own ambits, our governance is about rahmatan lil alamin, a bigger dimension that I think have a greater reach and a greater dimension that we all need to contend with. So these are some of the issues that I think I'm scratching the surface. I'm sure as you discuss this, you'll get deeper into what will be the root cause and what will be the root issues and what are the risks that all of us need to attend to before the university can progress the way it is built for in the future. So on that note, I would like to thank you for taking time off and also to thank Tan Sri Wanzul in particular for sharing his experience, given his vast experience in the wide world sort of management strategy, including Petronas, now with MAS and many other very awesome sort of organization. We hope we can rise to the occasion and make the university just as proud as many of these associations and the Fortune 500 or whatever it is that the university are also aiming to be at one point in time. So on that note, wabillahi taufiq wa hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullah. I wish you a fruitful deliberation and also as a game changer for the university moving forward.
Sorry, Doctor, please unmute mic.
Okay, sorry, technical glitch. Okay, Alhamdulillah, thank you. Wish to thank Director again for his welcoming speech and also his support to Risk Management Office in many ways. I really appreciate that, Director. Anyway, just to highlight a few things, before the Risk Management Office exists, the risk unit was actually under the OSIC, just one small unit function under OSIC. So we kept receiving people referred us to OSIC, but actually Risk Management Office is on its own. Okay, once the Risk Management Office established, we received the mandate from the chairman of the Urmc, and our chairman of the University Risk Management Committee is here, Tan Sri Wanzul Zulkifli Wan Arifin, and please welcome Tan Sri Wanzul to the session. And just a little bit about Tan Sri is about that he became the BOG member early this year and appointed as the chairman of University Risk Management Committee in May 2021. And a little bit of background is that Tan Sri has contributed a lot, especially to the our own national oil and gas company, leading Petronas for more than 30 years. Please welcome Tan Sri Wanzul and Assalamualaikum Tan Sri, how are you? Just a little bit, some introduction. So, how have you been doing after you left Petronas? If you just want to update us, what kept you busy this couple of years?
First of all, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and Alhamdulillah. Thank you to Dr. Shaliza and the team, and also the team at DRB actually for setting up this session here. Thank you, Tan Sri Zul, for the kind words in your welcoming remarks, and also I'd like to thank the participants for spending their time this morning in this session. What I've been doing after Petronas, well, actually, my original plans was to travel with my wife. Yeah. So I think, we love traveling, but, circumstances do not permit.
Yeah.
So, because of the COVID. And so I've been keeping myself busy in a few non-executive roles. I'm chairing Malaysia Aviation Group, Malaysia Airlines Berhad. I'm chairing DRB where we are having this session.
Yes.
And also I'm chairing Guest Malaysia. I'm also, of course, on the board of IUM.
VUCA member.
And also on the board, together with Tan Sri Rector, on the Razak School of Government. So I've been doing many things. I'm also involved in some HR companies, in some fintech and digital companies. So that has been keeping me busy this last 18 months.
That's not retiring. So much plan of retirement. But anyway, how did you get involved into becoming the among board of governance member?
Actually, it was Tan Sri Zul, Tan Sri Rector. We are together on the board of Razak School of Government. Some of you may know this is also part of education. This is part of the skill building, talent development of the officers, senior officers in the public service. So we are together on that board. And some time ago, Tan Sri Zul approached me whether I'll be if there's any interest to be on the board of IUM. So I said, I'm happy to, in case I can contribute in any way. Then actually when I joined, it was Tan Sri President. I didn't know that they were setting up URMC. I didn't know the plans then. But when I joined and this idea of setting up RMO and URMC, so he was the one that approached me to chair URMC. Again, I said, if I can contribute, I'll be happy to. But I told him, I'm not the subject matter expert. And I still am not the subject matter expert. But I think my experience in industries that has got to deal with a lot of risks, a lot of inherent risks in the industry for many years. And even now in Malaysia Aviation Group, I think it is also an industry where risk management plays a very key role. And it is kind of embedded in the culture of those organizations. So I thought that this would be a platform just to share my experience in the area of risk. But I must also say, we have a URMC. Of course, Dr. Shaliza is a member of the URMC. We also have Dr. Fiona and Dr. Zamri and Cik Salihin, and he is a risk practitioner. Salihin is a risk practitioner, so he is our subject matter expert.
Yes, correct.
And also we have Her Excellency Madam Visam, the ambassador from Maldives on the URMC. So I think with this collective group, we hope that we can contribute in terms of the risk journey in the university.
I see. Thank you. On another further note, since you have mentioned of chairing a few large companies, particularly the most high risk, which is Malaysia Aviation and MAS, and also Gas Malaysia, that is also a high risk company. So what do you see the general trends in the market, especially in big companies, and how do you think that, why is important for them to manage risk?
Now I think we live in a very uncertain world, for businesses and also for institutions like yours. Yeah. Consultants like to call it VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. I like to add another U actually to the VUCA, is untrusting world. Yeah, it's social media and all that. So
Yes,
these are issues that businesses face today. And I think with this COVID pandemic, the emergence of the importance of risk has become more pronounced. Yeah, I think a lot of businesses now, it is not only about making profit, it is also how you create value for all your stakeholders. And and this becomes very complicated because there are many threats in terms of how you want to fulfill your vision, your mission. And that's why this risk management practices, I think, will be enhanced in general. It's also evolving depending on your industry. Sometimes geopolitics is a major top risk, sometimes market risk, sometimes certain companies, technology risk. So, it's evolving. But how I like to think about it is it is all about sustainability of the organization or of institutions. So I think today it is no longer an option. Yeah, you need to be good at your risk management in order for you to be sustainable. And when I mention sustainability, maybe people think about climate change and all that. That's true, but it's also about sustainability of the business, of your existence. So I think that's how I see risk management now, and why it is important to manage risk.
But how do you think that, because you are talking per se with regards to profit organization, now we are suddenly involved, not to say suddenly, because you also mentioned before that you involved in Razak School, so that it's in line to education. So how do you think that risk management would benefit in the education sectors, like institutions of higher learnings and your Razak School?
It's now it's not all about profit. Even businesses, it's not all about profit. You've got 3P now, people, planet, and profit, and so I think education. It's maybe I like to go back to the welcoming remarks of the rector just now. I took a few notes so that I won't get it wrong. So he did mention about what the education system would look like in the future. Yeah. And he talked about access and fairness and equity, justice through education, the concept of amanah, education as a leveler for the society, the concept of rahmatul alamin. So these are some of the very difficult, I think, they are very difficult target and strategic objectives. If I look at risk, I would like to categorize them into 3 clusters. Yeah. I think first you have what I would call a preventable risk from internal. And this one you can mitigate by having rules-based, by having rules and regulations so that people don't abuse their authority, so that procurement is done in the right way. I think that's so fundamental. But when I was listening to Tan Sri Rector's remarks just now, I think this involves a lot in the second cluster, which is strategic risk. And this strategic risk, I think the mitigation is very different from the first group, which is preventable risk. Yeah. So this strategic risk, I think it involves a lot of dialogues, it involves a lot of diversity in thoughts, a lot of constructive dissent in our deliberation on how to mitigate this kind of risk. It's very challenging, and it's not something that is easy to achieve. Also, to elaborate the third category, which is what I would term as external risk. So these are the risks that are really beyond our control.
Yes.
Yeah. So maybe going forward, I would also encourage for us to think about preventable risk, strategic risk, and external risk.
It's like a hierarchy, is it?
But I think we really got to fix the first one before we can mature into having a good risk management system for the other two.
Yeah, I mean, improve internally first before reaching out for the strategic ones and overcoming the external.
Yeah, it's not about perfection, but it's also having. I mean, we need to reiterate many times, but I think that's how I would like to suggest that we look at the whole enterprise risk management.
Relating to your suggestions of that 3 clusters, moving from internally first, and so since the risk management office was started, do you think that is the role of the risk management office on the first cluster, preventable?
Yeah, I think this role of risk management office, to me, you can cut across all the 3 clusters.
Okay.
Yeah. But the first thing for risk management, which I think would be important today, as what you and your team are doing, is to create awareness. And I think this program is part of this session is part of that program.
Yes.
Yeah, to create awareness. I think another role is also for RMO to really cascade a uniform methodology across the whole university, how risk management should be undertaken. So I think, awareness is important, having a uniform, harmonized methodology so that we speak the same language.
Yes.
Yeah, so that, the terms, the terminology is understood by everyone. And also RMO to monitor, actually. Yeah, to monitor how this effectiveness of the risk management system, and reporting to BOG, of course, Urmc and BOG. I think that's a key function of RMO, because giving assurance to BOG that we have an effective risk management framework is required. And if we don't have also, we have to report to BOG that we don't have a risk management framework that is effective.
It's coming.
So I think those are, and very importantly, and I think this would be the strategic objective, is to create a culture where actually risk is embedded in the culture of work at the university. So I think those would be some of the primary risks that I see to be undertaken by RMO.
Yes, it's among the risk management office or RMO is also, like you said, is the first thing that they are trying to do is on creating the awareness. So this is what we are doing. Yeah, alhamdulillah. But how about the roles of the KCDIUM, the Kuliah Center Institute, the division of what will be their role?
Actually, they are the one that's actually managing the risk. I don't think we can expect RMO with a staff of 3+1, to be managing the whole risk of the university. And that shouldn't be the function. Yeah. I think for the KCDIOMs, I always have KCDIOMs, they should be, in the end, they should be familiar with the methodology. There are many versions, many words describing the methodology, but it all comes down to identification of risk, to assessing the risk, coming up with mitigation, and monitoring and reporting. I mean, there are many versions, many methodologies, but essentially those are the basic steps in risk management. It's important for KCDIOMs to know that they are the best party to do this because they know the details. So we RMO cannot take away that responsibility and accountability from the KCDIOMs. It's not about form filling.
Yes.
It is not a compliant kind of exercise. If we are stuck at that stage, that means we don't have an effective risk management system. So I would like to appeal, I would like to urge that we should come with that mindset. It is not a form-filling exercise. As we mature in this program, in this journey, I think there'll be dialogues. Like I said, dialogues are so important. Be ready to have different views. Challenge the assumptions, ask a lot of what if questions, and so those kind of behaviors are the one that, and maybe even more advanced on the external risks that I talk about, maybe do scenario planning and all that. All these I think are available in the university. I got high respect for the talents and the brains in the university. So I'm sure all these are available. It's only how we package and orchestrate the whole efforts.
Yes, actually, the methodology is the risk office is now trying to reach out and disseminate that particular information. So we are in the process of disseminating that particular methodology, and it was also being asked, if I remember, by Prof. Razak during the MRM meeting. Prof. Razak was asking about what are the information that he wants the RMO to share with them. So we are pitching our things, so we just have to wait a little bit longer. Okay, coming to the risk clusters that you mentioned, starting from internally ones, the preventable ones, strategic risks, and external risks. So we are now improving our preventable risk from the internal side. At the same time, what do you think of the strategic risk? Must it be like focusing on the preventable ones, internal ones, or straight away do it parallel, preventable and strategic? Because the RMO has actually identified about 3 key areas, the governance, financial, and operational. So they had done these, like you say, dialogues, okay, in June for about 2 months. We had the interviews with essential officers, and they had come up with governance, financial, and operational key risk area. So how do you find that these governance, financial, and operational, should it be focused like on preventables, or should it be catered straight away for strategic risk, as you say?
I think most of the risks, because this was a very cursory exercise. I think these are the obvious risks that we have identified on the governance, operational, and finance. To me, most of them, if not all, are within the preventable risks. If not all, I'm not sure. I've not actually looked at, but I guess these are all the preventable risk. I think we should start get that going. Yeah. But at the same time, I think we should look also soon. We should look also on the strategic cluster and on the external cluster. For instance, I know there is a program about humanizing education in the university. There are many initiatives. I think, whether the implementation, what are the risks of us achieving those strategic objectives? Have you looked at the risks? Do we have the talents required? Do we have because these are strategic options on how you want to achieve your strategic objectives. There can be many options. Yeah, so I think to answer your question, it should start soon. But I think our emphasis now will be on the preventable risk. Because when you look at preventable risk, there will also most likely we will realize there are opportunities to improve maybe our work processes, maybe introduce more digital kind of technology. So I think it's about risk, but it's also about looking for opportunities, how we can improve the way we work.
Correct. It's true, because the new framework, the risk management framework, we are also looking at the risk and how we can turn it to opportunities, especially for example during the pandemic. So we cannot do the classes face to face. So turning it into an opportunity means you have to go online, and that's where all the lecturers have to learn online resources and online teaching. So those are the things that as the KCDRM have to go as well, that looking risk angle as well as turning them into opportunities, ways to improve your organization or your KCDRM. I mean, with this as well, just to mention that among us is Puan Inong from IUM Holdings. Welcome, Puan Inong. So Holdings is also part of IUM entities, and their risk will also be consolidated with the university risk later on. But we are in the process of doing it. Thank you for joining some of the from staff of the university as well as Puan Inong, okay, from the IUM Holdings. Okay, moving on forward, because we have so many diverse entities, okay, rather than the academic entities, you also have center like academy, and then now we are also including the holdings, and they also have to apply or look at this governance, financial and operational, right? So do you say that because academic, they might not want to focus on financial, so they divert themselves from focusing on financial risk? So meaning that as any KCDRM, do they really have to follow this governance or financial and operational?
It will be the role of RMO, I believe, also to instigate or provoke or whatever the right term is, yeah, so that you come up with an inventory of risk, and then maybe only then you assess the risk, you prioritize the risk. Maybe the risk is there, but it may not be so pronounced for some of the KCDIOMs.
Yes.
But today the government gives a fair amount of grants.
Really?
But what if it is being half, for instance? So those are the kind of things that also we should be discussing, because risk is about preparing ourselves for something that we don't expect. Yeah, I mean, I can share an experience in Petronas back in the 90s, early 90s. I was involved in a scenario planning team, and then the theme for the group is thinking the unthinkable.
Okay.
So I think that's how we push ourselves, yeah, to think. I mean, for instance, today, the COVID pandemic, organizations with with the history and the memory of SARS in 2000, in the early 2000, prepared themselves better. In fact, I can share, I know Petronas, I know Malaysia Airlines, because there are a lot of learnings in SARS in early 2000, which many organizations were not prepared for. But when COVID came, and I can share you, Petronas declared crisis even before, within our organization, before the government declared crisis. I remember end of January 2020, we already started Team A, Team B rotation as part of risk mitigation. So, you know, companies that has learned from the past, I think are better prepared today. And many things we learned during the COVID. Many things organizations learned during the COVID, you know, about the importance of mental health, about digital deployment. So I think this will also should be lessons learned, should be in the organizational memory for how we deal with unexpected things in the future.
Because we also sometimes have the response that most of our key risks would highlight catered or narrowed to our lack of financial funds. So to install new fire alarm system, okay, and we need new upgraded server or technologies, because technologies is always changing and we need to be vigilant on that. But how do you think that for these like institutions to actually, because the root cause sometimes we will always go back to the lack of funds, and how do you think that this like organizations like universities, when you have quite limited of funds, to cater as well for risks that you say like preventable and strategic?
You know, but that's a reality. I mean, it's not only for universities that lack of fund. Should I use BRB or should I use Malaysia Airlines? I'm not sure. Maybe I use Malaysia Airlines because I'm not at their office. Malaysia Airlines, during the crisis, the flights were only, the load was only 18%, 1/8 last year as compared to before crisis. But you know, they still had to pay for their leases of aircraft. But what's the mitigation? You know, what's the mitigation? Very quickly, we went into financial restructuring. We had, unfortunately, mutual separation scheme. We had to long-term park our aircraft. So, but you know, it is the reality. You know, funding, and I believe also funding would be a key element. But how do we mitigate? You know, sometimes we cannot mitigate risk. We cannot eliminate risk.
Yes.
Yeah, but we can only mitigate the impact of risk. And there is a concept more for oil and gas. It's called as low as reasonably practical. ALAP, ALARP. So, and that's how you minimize the impact of this. Yeah. So I think, and I'm sure we can think of ways. Yeah. And this is why dialogues are important. It may not be, some of the risk mitigation may not be liked by everyone, but there are ways. Yeah.
Because those among the comments or review when we have like pre-look at their risk registers, and they always say some of the root causes are always on the financial side, and that also will lead to one another, like a lack of latest equipment, and the equipment is deteriorating fast, so they need to be replaced. You have to apply and wait for the Urmc 12, 13. It will take a year, and by the time they got that money, that particular equipment is outdated already. So I think the rest of us has to be maybe think out of the box, perhaps, or like you say, think further a step beyond what we are facing. Okay, everybody, like even the financial, even MAS as well, they do a lot of restructuring, or maybe you also need to do a lot of that. Okay, we do have questions from the audience. Right, we have questions from the audience. While waiting questions from the audience, maybe I can just go on. While waiting for questions from the audience, maybe I can just proceed with one or two. Okay, going back to your preventable risk, internal risk. Do you think that is more of operational risk?
I would guess so. Yeah, I would guess so. And I think a lot of this mitigation, like I said, will come. If you want to mitigate this, it would be an improvement to the work process. I would suspect. I would suspect. So I mean, how do we hasten procurement? I mean, how do we ensure integrity in procurement as an example? Or even, I've had many BOG meetings, introduction of new courses. For instance, has the risk of it been talked about? Are there enough students? Are there? Is that actually what the industry needs? Because from an industry viewpoint, workforce of the future is a big issue. And I can tell you the industry doesn't know what kind of workforce it needs. So I mean, there are a lot of strategic matters, I think, which I will encourage the community in IUM to start thinking and asking ourselves. Like you say, the funding is not there. Is the cost really required? I mean, those kind of. So that's why I think there'll be a lot of questions, a lot of constructive dissent. That's what I would like to call it. A lot of divergence in thoughts and opinions. But I think this is what we need.
I mean, the thought process, because they say that, okay, these extra courses are micro-credentials, they teach online, and it doesn't really involve a lot of cost. It's just like one of the lifelong learning goals. So they are introducing some of those. That's what I say when you say, oh, there are so many courses in BOG that I approve. So yes, and we also faced like a couple of years ago, if I'm not mistaken, the Kementerian comes down with the penjubudan courses, close down or narrow down or change courses that are not popular, not many students. So, and I think many kuliah have really looked into that, because it is also costly. You just open the classroom, air conditioned, there's only 4 students around. It's not cost effective. Okay, let's see if we have question. Okay, yeah, and then further, how do you think? Because going back to your clusters of risk, non-strategic. If you remember, Tan Sri Rector always go for humanizing education. The missions on humanizing education, that is our strategic risk. So in achieving that humanizing education, what sort of risk that would actually comes into that?
I think that would be the strategic objectives, but there are many initiatives. I know IUM does a lot in the community, yes. A lot, I think the risk would be on the implementation of those. Whether we are clear on what success looks like, for each of the initiatives, and what can go wrong. I think this humanizing education is the high level objective, but I think it's important that we are familiar with the risk of the initiatives leading to that. I go back to. I think what the market needs is a very important thing that drives education system. I'm not talking about IUM, but in general, I think that should be the starting point. What the market needs, what kind of qualifications you need, what kind of leadership attributes, what kind of. I think to me, humanizing education is also about that. I mean, are the attributes of leaders today the right attributes for leaders in 10 years down the road or 20 years down the road?
It changed over time.
Maybe yes, maybe no. So I think those are the kind of strategic discussions that I think we should be having, not only in risk but also as a bigger strategic dialogue.
We have some questions. I think some are from engineering, because they asked about how does ALAP, as low as reasonably practicable, fit in the risk management framework implemented by the university.
I was giving an example mainly from my experience in oil and gas and in many other industries. Also, it depends on the risk appetite. Yeah, you got to define what, I think for maybe I before answering university, maybe for businesses, maybe engineering. So I give you.
But ALAP is just a general.
It's a generic, what you can live with or what the industry, and maybe this as low as reasonably practical level goes lower over time. As you have got more technology, then you can improve the risk level lower and lower. I think methodology are becoming more sophisticated now. Yeah, if you look at banks, financial, you would know better. Use of digital on your credit profile, they can do many things to assess your credit profile within minutes.
That's big data.
Yeah. So maybe your risk tolerance of banks was different 10 years ago, and today it's different. So I think it also closely relates to the risk appetite of the industry that you are in. I think in university, maybe not applicable to all, but there could be maybe certain KCDIOMs where this would be applicable. But it depends on your risk appetite. Sometimes you cannot embark on a strategy because you don't have a proper risk mitigation. But certain companies, because they have got good risk mitigation, then they can embark on that strategy.
Yeah, but to arrive to risk mitigation, we need to do this risk identification.
And also you must have the talents. You must have the talents, you must have resources on how to mitigate.
Yeah, that's also is a risk. That university say. Anyway, we have another question. How does control entities in university could work together and build the risk-aware culture under the IUM umbrella?
The ideal case I would suggest would be we have a uniform methodology throughout the group of companies in the university, including holdings and others. So that it's easier, so that reporting, you don't have a duplication of efforts when it comes to reporting, the format and all that. So I think everyone at least should be familiar with the framework, with the methodology, and it saves a lot of duplication. Yeah. So if somebody goes on a consultant using this methodology and holding uses a different methodology, and I don't know, SASMAC or use, then I think to consolidate, I think would require unnecessary man hours.
But just to add, the university as well with the control entities, holdings, we are starting to work alongside together because we are under one roof, one umbrella. So we are working on university, and alhamdulillah, thank you from the support from the holdings, Datuk Sri Nazri Nozrotani and Puan Inong especially. Thank you very much. We also get a lot of help from SASMAC. Thank you, Prof. Dato Saufi. Okay. We thank a lot of people because they really support the risk management office in the awareness program as well as when executing our work. Okay, we have another question. We talk about sustainability. How to ensure sustainability of risk management practices in the university?
Only if you make it as part of your culture.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I'm a strong advocate of good cultures. I think my DRB colleagues here know very well. They are embarking on a journey. I believe culture is important because you align the way people think and behave to achieve the results that you want. So sustainability in terms of risk practices, I think if you embed it as part of your culture, so it goes without thinking. I think it's important. How I want to say is so that we think about risk. Thinking about risk comes naturally.
Yes.
And thinking about what we can do about risk comes naturally. And it shapes the way that we think, we act, the way we decide.
In decision making, especially.
In decision making. So I think that's the kind of thing where I'm sorry I got to use again the industry that I've worked for many years. If let's say a Petronas staff climbs the stairs without holding a handrail, that is an offense.
In what? In
safety, for instance.
Is it in the kita panggil kat C tu?
Yeah, on a platform or even in buildings.
Buildings. Kat sisi tu.
Yeah, I mean, building pakai lift sekarang lah. Tapi no, if there's a handrail, you must use the handrail. If you go in a company car in Petronas, even you are seated at the back, as long as you don't put your seat belt, the driver should not drive. So it has become a culture. So it is not a compliant thing anymore. Yeah, it's not. So that's why I think we need to progress to that, where it is a culture, part of the culture, where it's embedded in the whole culture, that people don't think it comes naturally. And so I think that's how you can sustain these practices. It will not be easy. Yeah, it will be a journey that we have to go through. And this one, it has to start from the top. It has to start from country president to have this culture. And it needs the commitment of everyone.
We have one last question. I think because of the post-pandemic, so we can expect the cost of risk management to rise. So many things to manage risk nowadays. So I mean, in terms of what you have done in MAG and MAS, post-pandemic, right? So that's the effect to the costs is significant.
It also depends on affordability.
Okay.
On affordability, I wouldn't say how far you want to go. How far you go? Maybe I use DRB example, supply chain is a big issue during the pandemic. Logistics costs, for those who know, I'm sure you all know, integrated circuit semiconductors were a big issue. And proton were affected, the supply chain. So I suppose it's how far you want to go and mitigate the risk. You could get if you really want to mitigate and you can afford it, you can really get the semiconductors for many times the price, for instance. So I think it's how far that you want to mitigate. And I must tell you that Proton did mitigate. They did buy semiconductors at very expensive price.
Is it just like, to mitigate? If you want to mitigate, ukur baju badan sendiri, I mean, based on what we can afford.
And sometimes don't get into that practice. I mean, that's you wouldn't have any risk if you don't do that. For instance, I mean, a very simple example: Malaysia Airlines now flights are coming back. Yeah. And many pilots have not flown for a long time. So that is a risk. It is not only on Malaysia Airlines, on many airlines. So what do? We ask them to go on simulators. We ask, and if you all have flown on Malaysia Airlines, presumably some of the flights, we have got 3 pilots, where 1 pilot is just an observer. And this is not that, it is just for him to really be familiar with flying again after many months. That is one example. Yes. The other example is rostering. We roster pilots who have flown many hours during pandemic with someone who has not flown as many hours. Yeah. So rostering is also part of risk mitigation, and that doesn't cost any money. Yeah. So you know, I think there are many ways that we can have a very cost-effective mitigation program.
Okay, one last question, and I think we can wrap up. Someone was asking, Prof. Nobik was asking, Datuk Prof. Nobik, our CIO, and university is not ready for, the thing is that one of the most difficult risks to a university now is funding, like you say, and university is not in a ready position for the future. So what would you advise? And I think that also would wrap up, what would be your aspiration for the university?
Well, that's, I think should ask Tan Sri Rector that. You know, I think, yeah, yes, thank you, Prof. Nobit. Actually, he's in my batch in Australia. So he just wants to give me a tough time, I think. Yeah. No, you know, I think it is, I was also involved in UTP, University Technology Petronas, and funding is definitely an issue.
Really, even UTP?
Oh yeah. I can tell you offline how much Petronas supports UTP every year. Okay. Yeah. So even the RV HiCom has got a university. So you know, it is a challenge for all universities. So I suppose it is a common challenge. It is not an easy solution. But I go back again to the purpose, the mission, and the vision of the university will have to be very crystal clear on why we exist. And I think there will have to be some
guidance. No.
Guidance, yeah, there'll be some guidance from all the stakeholders on how we want. It is a common issue on university because this is also an investment for the future. Yeah, it's an investment that you don't get returns the year after or next 2-3 years, but this is an investment for the future, and we should be clear about it. So at least that's how I see investment in education is. But having said that, whatever grants that we have, I think we should be clear that we spend every ringgit wisely. And then I feel, I suspect, part of our risk exercise will also show opportunities that where we can justify every dollar that we spend. So I think that's how I look at the funding piece. Yeah, it's not because we get grants every year from the university and we can just spend any way we like. I think we should be very wise in how we expend the grants.
Okay, I think that's the last topic. You got your answer. And thank you, Tan Sri, for your time. Everybody also, thank you for your time. Those who have joined, I'm unable to see the names, but I wish to thank everybody. And looking forward, there will be, inshallah, more of this risk awareness program. So wait for it. We are working it, so give us some time. And we would like to thank the RB HiCom, Cik Mahmoud and his team for this spacious area and very nice backdrop there. MSD, ITD, OCAP, and the risk management office team, as well as other parties involved directly and indirectly on the success of this event. And finally, thank you so much, everybody. We really have very tight schedule. Stay safe and be dynamic to under the new environment, under the post-pandemic. Stay safe, follow SOP, and salam alaikum from Shaliza and Miss Management Office saying thank you to everybody. Thank you and salam alaikum. Pass back to MSD.
Thank you. Thank you very much.